Welcome to the Goth Academy podcast. Hi everybody, hi Rutger, Dr. Rutger was. Hello Rutger, how are you doing?
Look at what you see in her face. The mirror of your dreams. Make believe on everywhere. Given in the light. Written on the pages is the answer to a never-ending story.
We already lost all our listeners.
That's how I'm doing right now.
Hi Rutger.
Hi man.
So doing very well. As maybe some people have guessed, if they have not guessed it by the title of this podcast conversation, they have surely guessed it by now. We're doing a Stranger Things podcast.
Woohoo! Hello, nerds.
Hello 80s people and borderline 80s, 90s people and just people who like to reminisce about a past that they have not even experienced. Oof. This would be our theme, I think, in this conversation. So, we want to talk about Stranger Things. From what angle do we want to tackle it?
At least 3 angles, but first of all, I want to say I have zero shade for Stranger Things 3. As entertainment, it succeeded completely. I enjoyed it a lot. This is no dissing at all. This whole podcast is just going to be positive. I loved it.
Yes.
It was great.
Yes, we loved it. We watched it together when you were here in Tel Aviv. Binged it in like 3 days. So the first season, I loved the first season. The second season was goodish. And so I had really low expectations for this one. First episode, I don't even remember why. I was like, me. Then we watched the whole thing. Great run. So much fun. Just super fun. But we don't want to diss it or criticize it. We want to critique it in order to understand maybe why is this coming out now and why are so many people loving it. I think 40 million people watched it in the first weekend on Netflix.
There's the complete failure of the romantic love, and I think that is a kind of social commentary that's actually in there. Everyone gets cock-blocked and pussy-blocked, and there's no romantic end for anyone.
I dump your ass.
Right? Did you realize that as you were watching it? The Scoops Ahoy, boy and girl, they don't get together because the girl likes girls. And like Joyce and the police officer Hopper, they don't get together because he dies in the explosion. When like in a real 80s movie, he would sort of, wipe the dust off his shoulders and then they kiss in the rubble in the end and it's all good.
Yeah. By the way, bold prediction, I don't think he's dead. I think he's in Russia. Yeah, I see why I get your point.
Feelings for one another.
Whoa!
You are way off base,
Oh, spare me!
Okay, Back to the Future is being referenced. And there's kind of a parallel there. So, for example, like you, Gil, you're a media mogul, right? Command a vast empire across video, audio, social media, print media.
Wow.
Like you command this empire and you can execute this vision and with which you reach like literally dozens of people, right?
Sometimes a few dozens, yes.
So, exactly. But it takes a while to get to the point where you can execute these things, especially, for example, when you make movies or TV shows or something. So you, for example, ate the shit sandwiches in corporate broadcasting for a little while. Turned out that was bullshit. And then you struck out on your own. But by the time you get to do that for yourself, you're probably maybe in your 40s already. So when you make youth sentiment, it's always going to be maybe of about 30 years ago. So Back to the Future, that was released in 1985, is the youth sentiment of the producers of that movie, which is in the 50s, in 1955. And Stranger Things is being made by these dudes who are, I guess, about our age. And so they are doing these flashbacks to the 80s. But also in a kind of a twisted way as well, right? So I guess there's a little bit of social commentary in this here, like in the 50s, like this is before second wave feminism and very sexist, horrible time, much worse than now. Yeah. Although now we're not great either. And so the myth of that time was, well, if a dreamboat kind of guy comes along like Marty McFly, you know, in his Calvin Klein underwear, then all the girls are going to fall for him. Like that was the myth of the time when it was really more of a necessity to find a partner and stick with him, right?
Where are my pants?
Over there. On my hope chest. I've never seen purple underwear before, Calvin.
Calvin, why do you keep calling me Calvin?
Well, that is your name, isn't it? Calvin Klein? It's written all over your underwear.
And so they pervert that in Back to the Future, where his mom, who doesn't know that she's his mom, wants him, right? Like, oh, all the bras want the dreamboat guys.
I'm pretty sure that mom was trying to bang her son.
Wait, the hot chick was Alex P. Keaton's mom?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
But they're the same age.
No, but he went back in time.
What?
And that was the myth that in our youth was being fed to us in movies like Back to the Future, but in a little bit twisted way.
That you have to be cool?
Well, that the boy gets the girl gets the boy, and that's like the goal in life, to start a family and stay together.
Yes.
And as we were watching these movies in our youth, half of our friends or whatever, the kids around us, are from... And that was the myth that in our youth was being fed to us in movies like Back to the Future, but in a little bit twisted way.
That you have to be cool?
Well, that the boy gets the girl gets the boy, and that's like the goal in life, to start a family and stay together.
Yes.
And as we were watching these movies in our youth, half of our friends or whatever, the kids around us, are from divorced families. And I think that comes back a little bit then in Stranger Things, right? So fast forward 30 years, and now the children of that age, of the 80s, are now making shows. And although Stranger Things is completely retro back to the 80s, at no point does the guy get the girl.
On the other hand, so while the message in Back to the Future is that you have to have some some aggression in you in order to succeed, that someone like Marty McFly, that's the dad, right? Or the son.
I'm not sure. Yeah, okay, but McFly Sr., he's kind of wimpish, you mean, huh?
Hey, you got my homework finished, McFly?
Well, actually, I figured since it wasn't due till Monday.
Hello? Hello? Anybody home? Hey, think, McFly, think.
Yeah, he's wimpish, and as long as he's a wimp or a nerd, he doesn't get the girl.
George, help me, please.
Just turn around, McFly, and walk away.
No, Biff. You leave her alone.
And here, there's kind of like a retroactive retelling of the story of the nerds, because we now live in the era of nerds. But the people who are now 40, of course 50 or more, when they were in the 80s, 70s, 90s, they weren't ruling the world. They were like more social outcasts, and oftentimes were lonely, and didn't have success with girls at all until a later age. So here you have some kind of like a retelling of the story where in the first season, if I remember correctly, there was some bullying, but since then that's already long gone, and now they're like super cool. The nerds are super cool, and even in this season, when the little child who talks about Charlie Regiment, when she calls Dustin a nerd, he doesn't really care. I remember when people called me a nerd, I didn't like that. It wasn't really cool to play D&D.
Yeah, in the 80s it was a terrible thing to be a nerd, and now it's cool. Now there's geek chic, that's fine.
Totally. So let's look at it from a more healthier point of view. Not in a way that you feel that it's not realistic. You do see, for example, some sexism, but it's not something that makes you like turn away. It's like the past, but not really how it was, because otherwise maybe it wouldn't be as much fun.
Well, in the actual 80s, the sexism of the people at the Hawkins Post, they would just be serious and they would be like funny, ha 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 ha. And now actually they show in Stranger Things how much these guys are horrific assholes, right? So you can also see how the norms have moved.
I hear there's a beauty pageant at the fair this year.
Yeah, I'm looking for above the fold here, Bruce.
And clearly you haven't seen Lucy LeBrock, because I'm not sure she'll fit above the fold.
Fellas, in 6 hours we go to print. I need something real.
Oh, I think they're real.
And also, for example, how Robin, the girl of Scoops Ahoy, she's lesbian, but they don't portray her as very butch or something or anything like that.
Yeah, she doesn't even say the word lesbian.
No, she just she likes that particular girl, and that's it. In movies from the 80s, there is much less fair representation of diversity than we have now. And I thought it was interesting to see also how they dealt with that. If the 80s are the great time, that's the time, I guess, when, for example, gay people are supposed to stay in the closet. And now it's in Stranger Things, it's a bit more just something that is just kind of natural and represented in a way they wouldn't do in the 80s, where it would have been a lot more scandalous than it is now.
So there was a nice little hint to Lucas when they were going in to see this old lady who was possessed by the demon, and the nurse at the hospital, she was black, and they were like, we're her family, and everybody's white, and the old woman is white and he's black, and she's like looking at him. It's like a large extended family. it's like the only time that they had to reference the fact that he is different than them. Like he gets the girl, right? At the end of last season, he got the girl, and his sister, super smart, super whatever, does whatever she wants. She's taking care of business, and she could be part of the gang just as well as the boys.
Don't you love your country?
You can't spell America without Erica.
This show plays on nostalgia. Doesn't play on the plot. I would even say that it doesn't really play on the characters. I like the characters. You love the characters, but you love them because it's as if everything is in soft focus. It's not that the characters have a lot of depth in them and have a strong arc. They have like a rudimentary arc. They start in one place, they end in another place, but there's not so many layers to them. I'm not saying that as to criticize, but the main appeal is just fun, nostalgic show, even if you have not lived during that time. You said that in the 80s, a lot of people were divorced. The Netherlands is more progressive than Israel. When I grew up, I think there was one guy in the entire 7 blocks whose parents were divorced. And when I was in the 80s, we had 3 types of cars. That's all we had until 1993. You had Subaru, the Volkswagen Beetle, and maybe you had Mercedes. That's it, because we had the Arab blockade. Only after the Oslo Accords, things started opening up. We didn't have malls, we didn't have any of that shit. But still it shows the cultural power of America, that when I watch it, I feel nostalgic towards a time that I have never experienced. It's not my life whatsoever.
But I think we also get nostalgic for when you're a kid and you watch the movies from that time, the Spielberg movies, Gremlins, The Goonies, The Never-Ending Story. It feels like those are really long, really epic films, and they make an enormous impression. And of course, now when you watch them again, it's kind of unwatchable. But Stranger Things tries to actually revisit that feeling. And because now they have a whole series, they can stretch out the plot lines a bit more and weave more narrative in there. And so it kind of works also at that level, at trying to recapture that Spielberg feeling.
That's very true. So just last week I watched, again, The Jungle Book. This is 1967, but still, I grew up on that too. So Baloo meets Mowgli, they do the dance routine, then the monkeys take him away, then he gets him released, and the next thing he tells Bagheera, the panther...
But I love that kid. I love him like he was my own cub.
Really? You just met him? But when you watch it as a kid, everything is epic and it seems long and it makes sense for some reason. But here also, you know what? I'm not sure they have adequately established why some people love other people. Why does Mike love Elle and Elle loves Mike? Just because they're there, I guess. Which could be realistic in this little town.
That could be enough.
That could be enough. So I had a theory, a thought about the nostalgia. So I think that we live now in nostalgic times, not only because now it's our turn to be nostalgic about our childhood, but the fact that, first of all, history starts to change more and more quickly as we go on. So each and every decade is very much different from the other, more so than in the past. The 60s are very distinct from the 70s and are very distinct from the 80s and 90s and so on and so on. And now, because of the internet and because of cameras and videos and the recorders and stuff, we can actually revisit like all the decades, listen to all the music, watch all the movies, all the shows, all the architecture, all the fashion. So everything is right just there. So it's just like so ripe for nostalgia to go back and to take all kinds of things from the past and take this and take that in a way that wasn't available before. So both the very rapid changes and the fact that all the information is available basically to everyone. So you can create a music video with samples from the 60s. You can make clothes that are retro. And so this is like the height of nostalgia, and whereas Stranger Things is super positive nostalgia, like fun and fluffy and nice, on the other side of the coin, we have very hateful nostalgia that has been weaponized as a political tool. So both sides imagine a past that wasn't really that way. But one story is like, yay, this is so fun. The other one is, no, I liked it better when my country was different. I don't like these people. Go back to where you came from. I long for simpler times when men were men, women were women, black people were doing as they were told. We didn't have all these young black and brown women telling us that we were doing wrong, that we were doing wrong stuff. No. Send them back. So it's kind of like the positive and the negative side of nostalgia, depending how you use it and to which kind of crowd do you cater. Both are imagined, but one is destructive and one is just like fun and just like a pleasant experience to have with other people.
Yeah, I think that's true. Especially the music thing. It's weird to think that used to just not be possible.
Yeah.
You could not listen to a performance of a song from the past again. And now when you listen to it, it brings up all these feelings, which is something that people for most of human history could just not have. Right, that's kind of neat. Yeah,
for 99% of human history. Yeah, right. So did I tell you that my grandfather's father was like a singer-songwriter, like a bard, and I found this out like a couple of years ago. Apparently, there's also a Wikipedia entry about him. He was in Turkey, because I'm like part Turkish. Rutger, you need to respect that.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
and. So he played for the last Sultan of the Ottoman Empire in 1910 or something like that. He played for him. And the reason that there is a Wikipedia entry on him is because he recorded his songs. And you can find them on the internet. So like scholars, they use these recordings in order to know what kind of music were they making back then. But the fact that it's so rare that you need this single person is like really bad audio quality, just like shows. And now on YouTube is like 60s songs, 50s songs, 70s, 90s, whatever. You can listen to whatever you want.
That's cool. Cool story. Huh. I was kind of thinking also about basically what you were referring to with the nostalgia and the weaponized nostalgia and the cutesy version. Like, which point in time was the time when America was great, so to speak, right? Was the 80s, make America great again. Maybe for Trump, it is the 80s, because back then he was, I don't know, I guess doing blow in New York and having fun. So he probably kind of thinks, well, maybe that was a great time or sometime in the past.
Yeah, but Reagan also said, make America great again.
For those who've abandoned hope, we'll restore hope and we'll welcome them into a great national crusade to make America great again.
So one thing I noticed as we were watching it was a lot of product placement. And you also pointed that out. All the Coke cans and the Doritos and the other things. I think there's actually something underneath that. I think there is actually a bit of critique here and there. Well, sure, but for the product placement, they actually used the new Coke, which was, in fact, a massive failure. Right.
Introduce the great new taste with Coca-Cola, the taste of today. Yeah, Coke is it. Come on, check it out now. It's got a new taste.
And they also really overplay the, going to the mall, isn't that great? We all go shopping, and they play Material Girl in the background.
Right.
And there's the whole sequence of the dressing up. And it reminded me of the critique that also existed of the whole mall culture. A lot of the plot takes place in the Starcourt Mall, and the monster appears there. And there was actually a zombie movie, which first was made, I think, in the late 70s, Dawn of the Dead, and it's been remade later, which also takes place in the shopping mall. And there the critique is, well, all these zombies are like the mindless consumers who just go on ambling through the mall.
These creatures cannot be considered human, seemingly little or no reasoning power. These creatures are nothing but pure, motorized instinct.
And here also the monster is like that capitalism monster that is being unleashed. And so I think there's a little bit of that critique in there as well.
I think also, like, when they spew out capitalist propaganda, it is so shallow that we as viewers, having are 30 years removed, we know what happened since. I would go out on a limb and guess that most of the viewers of this show are liberals who are not necessarily very fond of capitalism. So the fact that they don't really put an effort to explain why capitalism is so great, but just like, oh, this is, of course, obviously capitalism is great, they are communists. They don't have to outright critique it in order for the critique to be there to pop in your mind that, okay, Nah. This is bullshit. This is just like, hey, capitalism, just if something is good, then people buy it and then it succeeds. They trickle down and all kind of stuff like that nobody actually believes anymore. Okay, so that's a good point. Yeah.
What about Starcourt? I was just thinking. I mean, I know everyone loves them all, but how many small businesses have closed since it opened? Like 5 on Main at least. It's changing the fabric of our town in a way...
The death of small-town America. I like it. I like it a lot.
And of course, everybody who's watching that sees that also as a reference to how now the shops in the high street are being killed by internet shopping. Right? We can't help but think, well, first there was the creative destruction of capitalism when the mall concept came in and all these old-fashioned mom-and-pop shops went. And now that whole era is already at an end, and now the malls are disappearing.
Amazon is the new mall.
Right. And actually, so there's actually even more consolidation in one marketplace.
Yeah, and it's also interesting, like, when you were watching movies in the 80s, they never had people protesting a mall. It was just like, malls are great, shopping is great, consumerism is great, yeah. And here also they show, right, like capitalism, how it affects government. And even though the evil dudes in this season are the communists, the Russians, it's not really about their quote-unquote ideology, if you can really, call any of that what's going on their ideology. It's just like they're now the evil dudes. Last time was the American government, and now it's the Russian government.
I thought the most poignant scene of the whole series was the scene with Alexei at the fun fair. And I thought it kind of symbolized something, right? So
just retell it for people who don't remember.
So this is the scene where the Russian scientists, they take him to the fun fair that is being organized by the mayor. And there at the fun fair, he's just happy as a child. He goes to play one of the games. It's one of those games where there's a bunch of balloons up against the wall. And before he starts playing the game, he was being told, well, this is typical America. This is just all deep fried foods and all the games are rigged, right? And then
the system is rigged. Right?
The system is rigged. And then he starts playing one of those games. There's balloons up against the wall and he throws darts. 1, 2, 3.
One more for the big prize.
You can do it, mister.
Right, there's suspense.
Yeah, there's suspense, but he wins the game and then he's just happy as a child and he's like, oh, it's not rigged, it's real. And he's walking away with the plushy Woody Woodpecker and then he gets shot in the chest.
You think that's the thing? I thought that just like the prize is like, that's not really, is that?
No. So I have a theory about it. Can I tell you my theory?
Okay. Yeah.
So around that time, the West was really thinking, we're winning, right? So Gorbachev had just started perestroika and glasnost. Pretty soon, the whole Soviet empire would collapse. And pretty soon also this book would come out by Francis Fukuyama. Do you know the book, The End of History? And there was this whole thinking.
That was after, though, no?
Yeah, there was a little bit after. He first wrote the essay in 1989, so it's 4 years later. But that sense was already kind of in the air, and then the book came out in the early 90s.
But so the premise, just tell the people the premise.
My book tries to ask a larger question, whether there is such a thing as a history of human society, taking into account the experiences of all peoples in virtually all times, and whether there is a kind of coherent evolution in the nature of those societies as they progress from, very primitive agricultural, tribal societies up through various monarchies and aristocracies, up to the kind of liberal democracy and technologically driven capitalism that we have today. And the end of history refers to what I think still remains a question of whether that process is one that can terminate, whether that evolution, finally culminates in a certain kind of civilization that in a certain sense will be the last civilization that mankind will achieve, because in a certain sense it's it's the right one, it's the one that fits human nature in an appropriate way.
There could be no one else who wants to replace that. Once you have liberal democracy, why would you go back? And with the free market, obviously, the invisible hand of the free market will just give us all the products that we want for just the right price, very efficiently. Yes. This is great. We're at the end of history.
Incredible.
Right?
Incredible.
And there could be occasional backsliding, maybe a little bit, but basically after this, there's nothing else to replace it because this is perfect, right? It's very kind of naive Panglossian idea that we've finally arrived at the perfect system and that the 1,000-year Reich of capitalism is now going to start.
And nothing happened since the 1990s.
Right. The book came out in 92, and pretty soon thereafter we already saw that a bunch of the states that were previously communist and were supposed to go liberal democracy ended up in genocides in former Yugoslavia, for example. And there's this whole idea that everybody is just going to adopt liberal democracy. the antidote to that was already being cooked up right then by the failing evil Russians, namely, for example, in Afghanistan, where the Taliban and Al-Qaeda were being cooked up. And, history clearly continued, and now nobody thinks that we're at the end of history.
So how do you connect that to the...
So Alexei thinks, the game is not rigged. So he has this naive Fukuyama idea, like the system works, the market works, America is perfect. And just when that naive idea is starting to sink in, these new monsters that have been cooked up by the failing, collapsing Soviet empire, and monsters that have been raised underneath the shopping mall, symbolism, end up shooting him in the chest, right? So that is basically his personal 9/11.
I like it. The way that I saw it is that it's not outright rigged, that you throw the dart and the balloon moves, and you're just like, hey, this is rigged. What's up with that? It's rigged like behind the scenes. It's like the Matrix. You can't even see. So you think you won, but you just got a fluffy woodpecker that means nothing, basically probably not worth what you paid for it. And in the large scheme of things, you maybe got this fluffy woodpecker that will not help you at all. All the other people who were there, they think, oh, I can do that too. But no, you're just like this very skilled Russian guy in darts. The other ones will just spend their money away and will not make it. I guess both of them could be whatever. We can read into it whatever we want.
Well, but basically that is exactly the illusion of capitalism, right? Sort of the survivor bias of, well, if you apply yourself, like the game is not rigged, anybody can make it. You can also be rich if you work hard and aim right,
Right, and if your daddy gives you a $100 million loan.
Right, that helps enormously. Yeah. You know what? One thing was really noticeable, the really conspicuous absence of the internet, right? Like they have to go through phone books to find these businesses, and they have to, there's all sorts of mechanisms they have to, I guess, come up with, like the big radio tower, the walkie-talkies, and also in the plot, like all of a sudden they have to know what Planck's constant is, and right now you just Google it, but back then you had to go on the radio to make contact with a nerdy Mormon girl in Utah and ask her...
Do you know Planck's constant?
Do you know the Earth orbits the sun?
And hope that she's just there in her room. She's just in her room listening at it right now. If she was eating or at a friend or whatever, it's just okay, that's it. We can't find out. We're doomed.
Susie, this is Dustin. Do you copy? Over. Susie, this is your Dustin.
So, okay, Rutger, that was a great conversation. I hope you guys also liked it. And gals. And anything in between, because this is not the 80s. We're open to anything.
Or beyond.
Right. Yeah. You can be both, neither, half, a quarter. We're up for anything. And if you enjoyed this conversation, maybe you can share it with your friends. Hashtag Stranger Things on Twitter or on Facebook or whatever. And give us a shout out. We're growing slowly, and this is all thanks to you guys.
Is that a dig? No. Yeah, we're growing.
No, it wasn't a dig. No, we're growing.
We can grow quickly.
Steadily, not slowly. We're growing steadily.
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 Yeah,
we're going steadily.
Right. Yeah.
Just in the right pace, in the correct pace. We don't need to grow faster.
Yeah,
we could. But we don't need to. Definitely don't need to grow slower.
We'll be fine.
So keep doing what you're doing, unless you're not sharing our podcast, and then you need to do something else, which is share our podcast conversation. I'm going to also mention it, and I should say that now, that later this week I'm going to post with Noga a video about Stranger Things, psychoanalyzing the nostalgic elements in the show, talking about what is nostalgia from a psychoanalytical point of view. And what do we want to do next, Rutger? Next is Robin Hood. That's our next project.
Yeah, so we're going to review a bunch of Robin Hood movies. I just watched the very latest one, 2018 movie, which is kind of bad.
I didn't know there wasn't.
I guess we watched the 2010
which was fine.
version, which we watched together. There's the Prince of Thieves one. There's the Men in Tights one. And I guess there's also the Errol Flynn one from 1938. And there's, of course, the Walt Disney. Yeah, that is the classic. That is the Welcome to Sherwood Forest.
Okay.
We're in the High Middle Ages in England, and the Crusades are happening, and Robin Hood and his merry men are roaming in the forest. And stealing from the rich and giving to the poor, Bernie Sanders with a bow and arrow.
This is very up-to-date, very relevant. You need to follow our podcast in order to not miss that one. Definitely. I'm looking forward to it. Okay, Rutger, so I'll see you next time. And thank you everybody for tuning in. And bye for now.
Bye.
This is Susie signing off.
Wait. Okay.
Shit.
Look at what you see.
Look at what you see.
In her face.
In her
The
face.
mirror of your dreams.
Make
believe on everywhere.
Give it
in the light. Written on the pages. The answer to never. It's hard to sing with this delay. Never end.
We're losing subscribers. Yeah.
It's just a delay. If it was not for the delay, it would have been incredible.
That was crap.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, we'll edit that out.
So now okay. No, don't cut it out. You're gonna leave it in. Rutger, you're gonna leave it in. You're gonna leave it in.
Yes, this is the best part.
Thereupon a rainbow is the answer to a never-ending story.
Planck's constant is 6.62607004.
You just saved the world.
Gosh, I miss you, Dusty Bun.
I miss you more, Susie Pooh.
I miss you more multiplied by all the stars in our galaxy.
No, I miss you.
Enough.